want to introduce now 𝗬𝗪 who runs an agency called Angle of Impact, which he started earlier this year, so it's still quite a new project for 𝗬𝗪, but he is all about making connections between what's going on in the sports industry and the music industry. So a long background in music for 𝗬𝗪, he used to work for Warner, but now is exploring this connection between sports and music. So he's going to chair this next panel, so panel, please come up to the stage.
Yes, hello everyone. Thanks for the introduction. So yeah, this panel will be about the next generation of fans. We're going to talk about fandom, and specifically what can the music and sports industry learn from each other, what are transferable learnings between the two of them, how do they approach fan engagement, building fan relationship, and we have an amazing lineup of speakers to discuss this. So I just want to give everyone the opportunity to just briefly introduce themselves, starting with Hannah next to me.
Sure. Hi, I'm 𝗦𝗪𝗫𝗏. I work for Media Research. Some of you may know us, some of you may not. We're a data and insights and consulting company in music and digital entertainment. I also did one of the talks yesterday, so hopefully everyone caught that. Yeah, my focus is on social media and on fandoms, so hopefully this will be a very interesting discussion.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. And next to Hannah, we have Chantal.
Yes, hi. My name is Chantal, and I'm the founder and CEO of 𝗧𝗪𝗧. We're a music rights tech and licensing company solving copyright infringement issues across sports. I founded the company after my sport, cheerleading, was sued. I was working in music licensing, but I'm also a two-time world champion cheerleader. Still a competitive athlete, just competed in the World Championships in April. And I used to have a music production company that made mixes for these kind of sports. So created 𝗧𝗪𝗧 as a solution for that. We work with the Olympics. We have global blanket licenses with all of the major record labels and music publishers, and a unique suite of technology to solve the problem on a global scale.
Perfect. And then definitely, last but definitely not least, I want to say Tom.
Hello, I'm Tom Allen. I am the CTO of Downtown. Came into the business as the founder of Curve Royalty Systems. The other thing that is relevant here is I'm lucky enough or stupid enough to also own my boyhood football team, Torquay United. So the Venn diagram of this panel is very much me.
Perfect, perfect. So we have a lot of knowledge about fandom, about music, about the sports industry as well. To kick off this panel, Hannah, I want to start with you. Obviously, with media research, you're looking into like what are the changing consumption patterns, how are the new generations using all these platforms out there? What are the trends that you see happening, definitely among the younger generations of fans right now?
Yeah, so what we're kind of seeing with the younger generation is less about them specifically and more about the platforms that they've grown up with. They're mobile first, social first, post format as a result, because they're used to having music, video, games kind of interchangeably on their phone. And as a result of this as well, especially this reliance on social platforms, they are less incentivized to pay for access, because that to them feels like something, a guarantee, but it makes them more likely to spend on more fandom-centric and experiential behaviors. So yeah, that would be definitely a top line thing.
And are there specific platforms that are now upcoming or stand out among these next generations of fan, or how is this, the spread of the platform usage amongst these fans?
Well, unsurprisingly, it's TikTok is a really big one. I think it's over 50% weekly active use. YouTube is actually much bigger. That's over, I believe, 70% weekly active use among under 25s. And that's much bigger in emerging markets. So TikTok obviously is a bit more like US-centric, versus YouTube is much bigger worldwide in markets like Brazil. And in India, obviously TikTok is banned there. And so we're seeing younger consumers kind of flocking to this because it's easy, it's accessible, it's where all their friends are. There's sort of a gravitational cultural mass of what's happening there.
Yes, and you mentioned they're not accustomed to pay for this content. They're used to go to these platforms that are open access. Tom, from the downtown music side, how do you see artists grasping the opportunities that arise on these new platforms, or are they struggling with this amount of platforms that is right now, out there right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a standard story, I guess, of you know, marketing changes every cycle for people. I think the sorts of artists, you know, where you have kind of more heritage artists and not even necessarily heritage, but, you know, maybe 10 years into their career, you know, they do tend to focus on the more traditional side of things there. And I think when we look at what their fan bases look like, they tend to skew a little older. Obviously, those that are coming up in this kind of age are a little bit more native to it and you know, do very world building, as we call it, you know, that they're building their kind of artistic world and moving outside of just selling their music, but moving into, you know, talking about political issues and issues that are key to them. So I think, yeah, where you have people that have grown up a little bit more native with this stuff, it's a little bit easier. And I think, you know, us being, you know, in distribution side of our business, often, you know, it is, you're on an album campaign, you are selling something. It's certainly in the more traditional style artists. So the focus can often be tried to be pulled in that direction, and actually a little bit more world building is often required, I think, to really make impact on these younger platforms.
Yes, I like the metaphor of world building, and I feel definitely also knowing like how it went with Warner, we were always very focused on like the Spotify side of the business. And not really less on building actual fan relationships in music. I think this is something that is really unexploited territory right now, and something where the music industry tends to just focus on distribution of content, where it seems to be now more also about building fan engagement. Talking about obviously your role as well in Torquay United, do you see a difference in how you treat fans between a music company and, for instance, a football club like Torquay?
Yes. So we took over the football club a year ago, myself and 6 others in the consortium, and it was in administration. So, you know, distressed business. You clearly they hadn't done a very good job ultimately previously. So, what, you know, one of the key first things we needed to do was understand who the fan base were, and so a bit of, you know, survey data and sort of ticketing data and that sort of thing told us the age brackets of the fans and that sort of thing, and we skew very old. Non-league football certainly historically skewed quite old, which has been really interesting. It's been really, like, we've been on a bit of a journey with that and thinking about, okay, you know, how do we engage the younger fans within that? It was done pretty appallingly previously, so we're starting from a very low base, and that's been a really interesting, you know, we're at the start of that journey, but, you know, really kind of working out, you know, indeed because there are plenty of 18-year-olds that come to football matches. I think the attendances within non-league football have gone up by 150% in the last 3 or 4 years. Like, it is really actually, people are buying into their local football clubs and what it means to the community, and I think, you know, that ultimately then is our challenge as to how do we utilize that. And I think ultimately, though, your question about is it very similar? I would say it is ultimately, right? You know, you are using the different platforms that are right for the different age groups within this. You know, if you are skewing older, we're talking emails, we're talking Facebook, we're talking, you know, manager interviews and that sort of thing. Where we think about the younger audience is not the same at all, right? And it's, you've got to think about, and in wider sports they do it very well, of you know, bringing the fans in, of, you know, creating content for them to remix and all of these sorts of things. So it's those two ends of the spectrum are very, very different, and you have to think about them very, very differently. And so I think ultimately it is fandom, it is buying into a brand, it is buying into shared beliefs and that sort of thing. And I'd say it was very similar to music ultimately.
I think there's also an interesting aspect when you think about distribution specifically, the difference between sports and music. Obviously, because of legacy rights issues, sports is still very old-fashioned in terms of its TV deals and where it can stream and where it can't stream. versus music has kind of gone all in on like, oh, we'll just put everything on TikTok. Like we need to focus on TikTok, we need to focus on Spotify. And then we're having monetization issues as a result of that because streaming doesn't pay a lot, social doesn't pay a lot, and audiences get so used to just consuming on these platforms where they don't have to pay very much that the industry kind of goes, where's the money going to come from? Whereas sports is sort of on the other end of that journey. So in a way, maybe they have things to learn from each other to come back a little bit into the middle.
Yeah, so I would actually counter that because I think sports is changing and they're moving away from the traditional model of TV broadcast. Yes, you've got the traditional football and cricket and all those kind of sports, but there are a huge number of other sports, long-tail sports that don't actually really ever see the light of day on TV, and they're all creating online strategies. Now, the music industry often thinks that all these sports are going to YouTube and distributing their content through YouTube, but they can't do that because of the music rights. So, like 𝘕𝗙, we focus on sports like dance, gymnastics, figure skating, cheerleading. Music is integral to these sports. It's part of their score sheet. They get scored on the musicality of their routine, which is athletic, with the music. And all of these kind of sports that we're working with are creating their own sports VOD subscription-based channel. They're not going to YouTube anymore. You've got Flow Sports, you've got DAZN, you've got 𝗵𝗵𝗵𝗏, you've got Dance Sport Total. There are more than 30 VOD platforms I can name off the top of my head where they are specific to the sport and they have paying subscribers. And then in the US, it's not even just the elite level of sports. You've also got grassroots level of sports. So the National Federation of High Schools, they are basically like the governing body for high schools in America. They look after 19,500 high schools in the US. And they have the NFHS network, which is their subscription VOD service, making more than 100 million a year with almost 1 million subscribers. And they currently pay 2 million a year just to mute all of the music across high school baseball games, high school football games, cheerleading competitions. One of our partners, Flow Sports, even have paying subscribers that watch silent marching band videos.
Yes, I think you make a great point there, 𝗏𝗏, about also the opportunity and the size of the business that is sports. If we talk about the sports industry, it's more than a $600 billion market, whereas music, recording and publishing is, I think, around 35 billion right now. When you founded 𝘕𝗙, obviously you came from the sporting side, being an athlete. Why do you think that, for instance, the music industry is not really looking into this opportunity right now? What's holding them back to really go into the sports sector?
I think it's really down to the complexity. I mean, we always talk, everyone talks about licensing, even in the previous panel, how bloody complicated licensing is. It's taken me 7 years to get global deals with all of the major labels and publishers. 7 years of my life. And so a sport, like cheerleading, for example, one competition on one weekend, bear in mind there are thousands of competitions throughout an entire year around the world, has 8,000 pieces of music. That's 8,000 individual licenses that you need for the athletes to use the music for their routines, because they're editing and adapting the music, and then additionally, another 8,000 licenses for the sync rights, if it's going on VOD. And no one can handle that on a case-by-case basis, which is why we started the company, because we wanted athletes to have access to popular music so that they weren't going to go completely down the bespoke route or completely down production music route, because when you go to the Olympics and you watch a gymnast or an artistic swimmer doing their routine, you don't want to listen to a no-name track. You want their routine to resonate with the audience and to resonate with the judges. So yeah, I think the biggest challenge has been the complexity of licensing, and it just took the right time, the right technology in the right place to solve the problem.
Yeah, and I also think you just mentioned like a massive amount of platforms that there is in sports, and these platforms will develop more and more, with all of the sports industries now developing their own platforms to broadcast their productions, but also definitely on social there's a big opportunity for music to take more money and open up new revenue streams. Tom, what are, from Downtown side, kind of the platforms that you see growing mostly, where the biggest revenue opportunity is right now outside of the traditional Spotify business?
Yeah, I don't work on the licensing side, so I'm not the biggest expert on this, but in conversation with those guys ahead of this, I think we see the UGC-style platforms, your TikToks and Meta and the like, are around kind of number 6 and 7 within our revenue chart per DSPs. So, you know, it's not the lean forward stuff. It's not up there with the lean forward stuff. It is, a little lower than that. And I think for certain artists, though, that, you know, where indeed they are native to it, where they do have viral hits and that sort of thing, obviously that mix changes for them over time. So yeah, you know, that's where they sit on new opportunities. I'm going to say, unfortunately, I am not the man to ask. I apologize.
No worries. I think, Hannah, yes, yesterday, I think, also in your keynote, you gave a really good presentation about how it is to build, actually, fandom in today's industries. I think you mentioned a lot about that. It's more about building community, building, looking into really specific assets that can be better monetized. Like, what is, how should we build fandom in today's digital world?
The $1 million question. Yeah, so I guess to paraphrase sort of what I was talking about yesterday, fandom, when we talk about superfans, the industry loves superfans, right? There's 3 different ways to define them. Is it by time spent, is it by how engaged they are, and is it by the amount of money that they spend? And depending on where you sit in the industry and where your revenue is coming from, you're going to prioritize one or the other. Now, what is more interesting is that if we're looking at building fandom, it's not about asking what can our fans, you know, what else can we productize and sell to them? What more can they give to us? How can we get more money out of them? But rather about recognizing that fandom exists in context, which is usually a culture. It's usually more than just fandom of a song or fandom of an artist, but being part of a community that will involve, oh, I like this music, I also like this game, and I also like going to these events with my friends, and I like wearing these shoes. Like, it's a whole interconnected thing. So you may have someone, like hip hop is a very good example of, it's sort of like it's the music, it's the fashion, it's sports. And so you may have someone who listens to a lot of hip hop music, wouldn't consider themselves a hip hop fan, but they are part of that subculture, that scene. And so they do kind of count because they'll engage with it and they'll probably spend money and they'll go to an event. So when we build fandom and when we look at building these communities, you have to look beyond the thing that you yourself are selling and make these partnerships throughout the marketplace, which is especially important now that we're kind of oversaturated in terms of time and attention and things competing for that attention. There's just too much stuff and not enough time to consume it all. So grouping things together can actually be really helpful to everyone involved. And I think that is especially where like sports is a very good example of how we can do that.
Yeah, and also I think music industry is still very much focused on the consumption of listening and monetizing listening. Where is the biggest opportunity that music is now missing out on in terms of better monetizing, creating better engagement and creating long-lasting relationships?
So fundamentally, music is IP, it's intellectual property, and the way that you monetize IP is through licensing. And we do not have a very good licensing infrastructure. We don't even know what rights we own most of the time. Like the record labels and publishers, that there's often missing ownership pieces, and even when you find or try to find who owns the piece of music and it's with an independent artist or writer, they don't even have their contact details available, so you can't even contact them to try and clear a license. So how can we as an industry grow and enter into new markets, be it sport or gaming or other areas, when we don't even have a way to actually be able to streamline licensing? There's no way that people are going to be able to handle that licensing at scale. And the industry, I think, often focuses on UGC and also, as you say, listening to music. Like the primary use of music is for people to listen to it and enjoy it for personal pleasure. But if artists are wanting to make a living out of their music, they need to consider business opportunities, which essentially is a B2B market. So it's actually identifying other markets where we can monetize generally businesses have more money than consumers. So how can we connect the dots between the music industry, cleaning up the data, providing infrastructure to streamline those processes, and provide ways for the people who want to use creative IP, or music IP in this case, and be connected with those IP owners so that they can close those deals and music gets monetized.
Yes, definitely. And also, yeah, I think you mentioned a really good point with the rights issue. I think music is kind of, well, it's a complexity I notice talking to a lot of people in the sports industry, that everybody sees the music industry, well, from the outside, it seems like a very innovative industry, and I was surprised by that, because working in the music industry for around 10 years, I see it as a very traditional industry with a lot of problems, and I think that misunderstanding of complexity is also what kind of holding back the opportunities right now to better monetize and to grow the opportunities for artists, yes.
Yeah, absolutely, and like even monetizing, you know, having artists play live music in other places, like we talked about, you were talking about in sport. Like, sports sometimes have artists performing, and even trying to get those kind of relationships and find who to contact. The music industry to the outside sometimes feels like this black hole of I don't know what's going on, and is quite mysterious because it's quite well gatekeeped. And so if sports event wants to go and find the artist, they then have to go through numerous channels, which can take some time to then arrange for that artist to come out to their event to, you know, again, generate buzz and interest around the event.
I mean, you'd think it'd be more obvious because, like, the Super Bowl halftime show is probably more of an appeal than the Super Bowl itself.
Yes, almost always, especially with American football. I mean, they've always had to have cheerleaders there to make it more entertaining.
Yeah, I was just indeed reflecting on, as you say, when people look at the music industry from the outside, the amount of media people in the football world who just use royalty-free music because they don't know how to deal with it. But of course, music is so integral to all sports, right? Every club has their tunes that they play. Torquay United is late 90s dance track brothers. I don't know who did it, but and it's so integral, right? And those are all of the themes that come back again and again within sports of the music, the walkout music, and I say every sports team has it, and the fact that indeed that they just go for we'll just use royalty-free music. It's like no, there's a great opportunity here to do something bigger, better together that is multifaceted ultimately, right? Not just playing it at the ground, but how do we bring it into the online content there as well?
Yeah, and those fans, this younger generation, they've grown up with online. They've never really known anything else. Like TV broadcast, I mean, many people don't even have a TV license in the UK. You have to get a license, and people just don't watch traditional TV at that younger age. And so if music isn't able to be heard on those online channels, those fans get upset because they're so used to TikTok and YouTube and all of those having access to music that they think is free when it's not, but it's given this impression that it's free, they're able to access it. When it then comes to watching the content and that all that content is muted, they're like, why can't it just be made available? And that causes frustration, and then people choose not to watch it, or they'll watch it silent, like those silent marching band videos.
There's also maybe a bit of a threat there, because if the licensing is really complicated, the deals don't get made, sports doesn't have music in it, and generative AI music becomes free to use, and the copyright comes back on behalf of, oh yeah, that's fine, go ahead, you don't have to pay for it. Will sports teams not start saying, okay, well, we're not going to license music, we're just going to use Suno and spit out a thing, and then that's what we're going to use? So it's actually a huge monetization opportunity for the music industry now to make these licenses and make sure that these deals go through and that we can actually make these partnerships. And then the threat there is if you don't do it in the near future, you could lose out entirely, and AI companies will probably take all of that instead.
Yeah, we are already seeing that. I was at the Figure Skating World Championships in March giving a presentation on music rights, And the athletes, we're talking about licensing music, and the athletes were saying, well, what about just using generative AI, and then we don't have to pay for licenses? And so they're already thinking about how can they use alternative music that they can generate themselves to kind of avoid that cost.
Yes, and I think the opportunity is also getting bigger, because if you look at the younger generations, a lot of them are tuning out of the broadcasting and just watching like the short form highlight reels. And so music, or the sports industry, is heavily investing in this short form digital content output at a very, very, very high level. But that's also all content that can be supported by music. And where the music industry has a big opportunity to tap in. But I think, Chantal, that's also why you founded Click and Clear, because what I've noticed in sports is that they don't understand also that music costs money.
Yes, we do a lot of education. I spend many hours of my life educating people about music rights. And that's from, little athletes, young athletes, all the way through to the elite level athletes. And they've never known that they needed to license music before. And it wasn't until people started getting sued that they realized that this is a problem. But of course, access to the music is still a challenge. We don't have everything in the world, and it will probably be a very big challenge to get everything in the world, because unlike streaming platforms, we can't just make music available unless we've cleared 100% of the rights on both sides. We've got over 35 million copyrights in our database, but only 2.1 million tracks are actually live and available for athletes to license because of the fragmentation of rights.
What does the spread of is it generally hits that people are looking for in this world? It's not. It's
so wild. It can range from the top 40 hits to just like this independent artist that they've found on a channel, on a streaming platform or something else, to even going on YouTube and ripping off bootleg remixes of songs that aren't even licensed to begin with. So it's near impossible to then actually provide a license for them. But it is really quite an eclectic range of music and genres that these athletes are using. And then you've also got, in certain sports like jump rope. Jump rope is really quite connected with hip hop, and they use a lot of hip hop.
What's jump rope?
Jump rope. So it's like skipping, but they do like back flips and back handsprings and flips and twists, and yeah, it's and then like double dutch as well. So you've got one person on each side of the rope, and they're jumping in, and it's a huge sport. And yeah, they're doing very well. But yeah, different sports can have different connections with music, and then that can also differ from country to country.
And also within talking about the new generation of fan, talking about Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and how to build fan relationship and fan engagement as well. I think a big part of that's actually the content that is created by the fans. So UGC content. How should music and sports approach this, and how can they stimulate it to create better engagements, build more relationships? How can you tap into that opportunity?
I mean, a lot of it is, there's a lot of remix sort of things. There's a lot of, cutting up of being very creative with it, ultimately. Was there a stat of 50% of people under 21 had used one of the creator tools? You'll know better than I.
Yes.
Have I made that stat up?
No, that might be true that it's ever. I think on a weekly basis, it's more like 12%, but that's still like 12% are using it on a weekly basis. Yeah, I mean, I think there's another stat that I'm going to say is a maybe stat, but I believe it's about 60% of Gen Z watch more fan-made content than they do the original content, which when you think about it in terms of scale just makes sense. If there's like one OG thing, be it like a sports match or a TV show or a song, there's going to be like 100 fan-made creations. So if I'm scrolling through TikTok, I am statistically more likely to see 5 of those fan creations than I am to see the original thing. There's like pros and cons to this. I think the pro is that you can kind of lean back and let the fans go forth and be creative, and that can help build the community because they feel like they're invested in it. They feel like they're involved. They feel like they're making something. They're a part of something. They're like, I made this fan thing. The downside is you have less control over your IP, which is obviously some like Disney, very anti. Some like Netflix were totally cool with a whole musical being created off the back of Bridgerton, and then they got mad when they started selling tickets to it, right? So then it's competitive. But yeah, so it can be a really big opportunity, and it is going to happen anyway. You can't crack down on all of this. But it's very important to kind of have a strategy of, okay, what are we cool with and what are we not cool with and what are we going to allow to happen and what do we want to like try and encourage people not to do.
It's definitely part of the mix, isn't it, ultimately, right? You know, of you're going to have your official things, you're going to have, you know, the drive people to sell, to buy things and all of this sort of thing, and having that as part of the mix of how do we create some content here that is available for people to do that and encourage it amongst people, I think is very much, yeah, all part of it, isn't it?
I mean, fundamentally, they're going to just do it anyway. So if you can provide a way to actually monetize it, then try and find a way to meet in the middle. Like you talk about the videos, you know, you've got video content that then gets shared on social media. As soon as something's shared online, people just think that they have the right to just use it these days. Like that is literally the thinking of these people. And so the concept of IP is, in the digital era, is a bit of a struggle. You have to be better at then enforcing that and providing technology to enforce it. One of my cheerleading videos got 27 million views on Instagram, and we had lots of fans resharing that, but then we also had a fan do a remake of the video with our video in it, of course without permission, which then had 8 million views on Instagram. And so they're also getting high views from resharing other people's content on IP without permission, but obviously Instagram isn't monetized, so no one's making any money. But it's still sharing other people's IP without permission, which they might find offensive.
Yes, all right. So we have 5 minutes left. So I want to see if there's maybe some questions from the audience that you have for these panelists. I see even a PSG shirt on the first row. Is that specially for this panel or otherwise really cool, really cool? Are there any questions from the audience? All right. If not, then I have a question for the panelists, and this is for all of you. Like, looking at how the music industry approaches these new fans and how the sports industry approaches these fans, what are the biggest learnings that the one can take from the other in the industry?
Who wants to stay
question?
Yes, it's a difficult question.
I mean, I think sports isn't as fragmented, though it is kind of getting that way. So I think they can kind of learn from each other in terms of how much fragmentation do you allow in your rights. So sports, their rights are all in broadcast, and as I said, that's getting more fragmented, and it is better when it's less fragmented because it's then easier to manage all of the rights, and it's the same on the music side. It's so fragmented, we need to consolidate more to be able to work together more, collaborate more to enter new markets and monetize better.
I think one thing that sport does very well is they...
Make money. Make
money, yes, absolutely. Well, no, but a large part of it is using commercial partnerships. And I think the reach that, and again, we've explored this with the football club of like, we've got a local reach right now. What does it mean when we get a national reach, and how does that affect our commercial partnerships, front of shirt sponsor, whatever it might be. And I think that is pretty underutilized in the music industry. You know, there's plenty of it, of you know, brand hookups and that sort of thing. But you know, I think every artist will have a specific reach. Any artist that indeed, you know, has built a fan base and will have a specific reach, and it's not going to be selling dog food, but you know, there's opportunities in that. I think that is another revenue stream there to. As I say, every artist could really consider that, whether that's at a local level or a national or international level. I think there's opportunities in that.
Young people are in a post-format world. It doesn't make sense to them to have one thing that's sports and one thing that's music and one thing that's video. To them, it's all the same. So if you're thinking of it in that siloed kind of way, you're going to fall behind and not be relevant to them. It's all a mishmash. All entertainment is now, it's always been connected. We built industries in a way that wasn't because we had different distribution channels. The distribution channels are all the same. So start thinking in a more like holistic way. Make these partnerships, build these scenes with people in other areas of entertainment. Don't just think of music as music and sports as sports, but it's all different parts of someone's phone journey, I guess.
Thijs, we were discussing the IPL earlier, the Indian Premier League, And when they launched that, they had a Bollywood film star own one of the teams. They had local superstar singer own one of the teams, and it was made for this age. I think that's a really interesting, and it's now the second biggest league after the NFL globally, and it's cricket. Like nobody here likes cricket other than me, probably. That's just amazing, right? And they made it for this age, and they said, yeah, it's going to compete with the soap operas. It's going to be played at 8 o'clock every evening. We're going to have the big stars in there, and what that's done is obviously created a big environment for it, right? And a big commercial opportunity that's in that, and I think there's plenty to learn from that, I think, as to the way they thought about that and the way that they approached that and what that is for music. I don't know necessarily, but but indeed that speaking to that point of it, it's not one thing, right? It is all of the things, and thinking about how that mixes together, I think, is a really big lesson in that.
Yes, yeah, and I think that's also the conclusion. Like, we should stop thinking in silos. Trying to understand each other, work together, and that will open up massive monetization opportunities for both sectors. But it even goes more. I think we're moving into the age of not just sports, music, arts, but it's the age of culture, where everything is just one, basically one big silo, becoming one big silo instead of being separate. Want to thank everyone to round off the panel. Thanks for your. We'll be around. So if you have questions for the panelists, yes, we'll be around for lunch. So
exactly. Before I let you go, and before I let you go to lunch, I just want to say that I've heard some really, really interesting things this morning about how the music industry can really capitalize on these connections between video games and sports, and how so little of that is happening compared to the advantages of doing so. So it's been a really, really interesting combination of panels from the one before and this one about what those opportunities are. So it sounds like get on the opportunity, which is brilliant. And now you guys are going to be around for lunch. Right, you're going to be here, so if anyone wants to seize on that opportunity and talk to these guys about how that might happen, then do that over lunch. The same with the video game people who are here, with Fanny and with Julia and Matt, who's around, I think, and 𝘬𝘂. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Thijs. Thank you, panel, for a great, great discussion, and the one before. And we will break for lunch. Yay! So let's hear it. Let's have a round of applause for these guys. Thank you so much.